Hello dear learners, I hope you enjoyed the first session where we discussed the basic introduction on research and how scientific research is differentiated from the basic research. I left you in the two levels where I discussed about theoretical level and empirical level. Now moving ahead, let me clear these two concepts once again from the different perspective. So please remember, these two labels are nothing but the two different words in the mind of a researcher or a scholar or a manager. The two words which are mentioned in the slide are nothing but the two labels that we discussed in the previous slide. Please remember, the first label was the theoretical label, and the second label was empirical label. Now please try to understand, when I explained you in the previous session, the theoretical label is nothing but whatever you receive from literature review. So this is a literature review that one should perform. Once you will read literature, once you will go through some journal article, once you will go through some newspaper articles, some magazines, so you will develop some mental notion about the concept and topic. You will develop some conceptual aspects. Of course, as these are mental and conceptual aspects, they are intangible. If they are intangible, that means they are unobservable. You cannot observe the intangible part, right? Because it is something written in the literature. So can you record literature? It's not possible. You cannot measure literature. You cannot observe literature. The only thing is, you can read the literature, you can build your own understanding and understanding in one's mind. So the only thing you can do is, you can develop your intellect. So conceptual clarity on the concept is the result of the first level, the theoretical level. Now coming to the second level, that is empirical level. What do you understand by empirical level? As I told you, empirical level is nothing but the real observations. And when it comes to real observations, so where is the place where there is a observation? So for having an observation, you have to have a field, right? So the field or the operational area where the happenings or the patterns are being observed. Let's take an example. When it comes to mental, conceptual, observable, the theoretical underpinning, that means when we are trying to understand a motivation of any particular object, say for example students, or say for example employees motivation. So what we have to do, if we wanted to understand or if we wanted to conduct a research on motivation of employees or students, what we have to do? The first thing is, we have to remain into the world of theory, where we have to develop our mental notion, conceptual notion and unobservable notion on the basis of literature review, that how many studies are talking about motivation in the particular context, right? The context is whether it is employee context or whether it is students context. So we have to read the different articles and we have to prepare our mental status, conceptual framework or conceptual model. So you will see, you have heard about model building or framework, which has to be addressed throughout the study, is nothing but a result of the mental and conceptual world, right? Now once you are having this model framework, now what you will do? Now the second thing is, you will at the same time go to the real world, real observations, and you will find what is physical, what is material, and what is observable. That means empirical level is observable, because we are talking about what is happening in the field. In this field, pattern and observations are observable in nature. They are materialistic in nature. You can see them, you can feel them. These are physical. You have to interact with the individuals in case of social science. You have to go for your conduct an interview, focal group discussion, right? And these are the empirical labels. And both these two words, you will see this arrow from one side to another side, one word to another word, and another word to the previous word, right? So back and forth, this process has to be followed. So that observation has to be again verified with the theory, right? And theory has to again connected and tested for the observations, with the observations for the understanding of the real happenings into the world, right? So this two word is nothing but understanding of the theoretical paradigm, understanding of the theoretical paradigm, and connecting the theoretical paradigm with the empirical world, right? So this connection is having a back and forth cyclical process from one side to another side, another side to another side. It is cycle, one side to another side, another side to then the previous side, right? So this is the basic fundamental of the research, and the entire understanding of the research is based on this. Now see another picture. Here again we are talking about two words. So the theory and observation, these are the two pillars. These are the two pillars of what? Scientific research. Scientific research is incomplete without having these two pillars. The number one is theory and the number two is observation. And these two are nothing but the two different words. If you connect this with the previous slide and previous to previous slide, so this is nothing but a theoretical level, and this is nothing but a empirical level, right? So that means the theories are already listed where? In the literature, right? So you can develop your mental or conceptual or unobservable models, right? So what we are doing here, we are doing model building. Model building that has to be tested. So these are, model building is a part of theory, right? Now the second thing is empirical level. Here what we are doing, we are into the physical world, we are into the reality, we are into observable world, right? So everything is observable. We are into the field. So basically we'll see the observation happens in the field, right? So this is the two world connected with the theoretical level, empirical level, and you will see this back and forth process, cyclical process, is always connected with the theory and observation, which are two very important pillars of scientific research. Now, two very important concepts: deductive approach and inductive approach. Very important approach in the domain of research. Now it means, as I told you, entire research is having two words. One is the theoretical word and another is the empirical word, right? Empirical word, and first is theoretical word. Now when it comes to theoretical word versus empirical word, now you have to draw a conclusion, you have to draw a conclusion based on the patterns, because I said theory and observation are two important pillars of scientific research. So for conducting a scientific research, so from where you are going to start, whether you are starting from the first theoretical level or whether you are going to start from the empirical level, that will decide your approach, whether deductive approach or whether inductive approach of research you have taken. When it comes to inductive approach, induction or inductive approach, inductive approach is nothing but observations, from the patterns and the phenomena which is happening in the field. If you are observing this, and on the basis of the analysis, you are developing a theory. So this is a inductive approach, right? Therefore, inductive approach is also known as, this approach is also known as, inductive approach is also known as theory building approach. Why it is theory building approach? Because here, on the basis of patterns and phenomena and observation which are happening into the real world, we are trying to create a theory. We are trying to develop a theory. We are trying to generalize the observations for all the scholars for their future use, and we are developing generally the theory. On contrary, if you see the deductive approach, what is happening? From already established theory, if we are trying to test those theories to the phenomena or the observation which is under the study, and such kind of study are basically utilizing the deductive approach, right? So when it comes to deductive approach, these approach are also known as, this deduction is also known as deductive approach, and generally known as theory testing approach. This approach, induction approach, is theory building approach, and deduction approach is theory testing approach, TTA and TBA, right? So this is nothing but TBA, and this is what theory testing approach. Is it clear? Okay, I hope the concept of inductive approach and deductive approach from the perspective of two words of the research, which is essential for scientific research, is clear to you. Now, I have again written this scientific inquiry. These are the approaches which I already explained you, inductive and deductive approach. But for ease of your understanding, I am again writing this. Inductive research is nothing but theory building approach, and deductive approach is nothing but theory testing approach, right? So in case of theory building research, what we are doing, we are starting from what is our starting point? Starting from observation, right? That means we are starting from field, right? And then we are formulating theory. In case of deduction, what we are doing, we are starting from literature, and we are testing already existed theories. Now let me give you one example. So very common example of theory building exercise is grounded theory approach, and that is for qualitative research. When we talk about qualitative research, right? When we talk about qualitative research, where we are trying to understand the patterns from field, right, on the basis of some quality parameters, and then on understanding different trends, if we are trying to build a narrative or and if we are creating a synthesis on the basis of the different patterns on the qualitative data, and we are building a research, I mean we are suggesting some kind of theories or new phenomena, new laws. So that is inductive theory. And deductive theory is generally for quantitative, sorry, this is for quantitative analysis or research, where generally we are using hypothesis testing. Hypothesis testing. So hypothesis testing is nothing but it's a testing of already existing theories, the relationship which are based on existing theories, and we are testing those theories or the relationships which are existing in the theory, right? Basically hypothesis testing is what we are trying to test, the relationship which are already exist in theory with this, from the observations, right? So the hypotheses are basically we are forming on the basis of our conceptual model, right? So first thing is we have to conceptualize the model, and that conceptualization is based on the theories first. Then those theories has to be tested on the basis of the observations, right? So hypothesis testing is the part that has to be considered in case of deductive research, while in case of inductive research we will only see research questions and research objectives. No hypothesis, right? We will not hypothesize anything because we do not have existing theory here. We have to state only research questions and research objectives which will direct our entire research. But in case of deductive research, which is generally quantitative in nature, we have to have a conceptualized model on the basis of theory. That means we will start from theory. This conceptualization model will start from theory. Starting point will be theory, right? And from the theory, when we create a model, that model has to be tested. From observation. I hope the scientific inquiry and the approach of scientific inquiry, the scientific research, that is inductive research versus deductive research, or inductive approach versus deductive approach, is clear to one and all. Now, these two words are again connected with two different skill sets. Two skill sets are required for scientific research. What is the purpose of scientific research? To build new knowledge, right? So ultimate aim is what? To build or develop new knowledge, right? So what are the two skills required? The first is theoretical skill, that is reading literature. This is highly specific to context. What is the context? In which context we have to read the literature, right? So we have to very focused on our contextual understanding, right? So we have to have a clarity on the context, we have to have a clarity on the understanding the literature. That is a theoretical skill, and because it is a skill, it has to be developed. It required rehearse and practice, right? It requires a lot of rehearsal and a lot of practice based things, because skills can be acquired based on how much you practice on that, right? So if you have to develop a theoretical skill, that means know what, that's very important, right? What is the contextual understanding? What are the content that you have to read? Because you will see, specifically when it comes to online plethora or online this platforms, a plethora of documents, a plethora of articles are being you will find somewhere, right? But when it comes to know what, that's very, very important, right? How to develop that conceptual model, how to relate your theory with the reality, that's very, very important, and that requires practice. So how it has to be generated or created skills to be developed? The skill has to be developed with the repeated readings. What has to be read? Good articles, right? Good articles, because a plethora of articles are listed in Google Scholar or other domains repositories, but we have to able to identify first good articles, and what to read, how to read, right? These are equally important. Otherwise you will be, you will have a lot of literature that you will somehow stuck. Where is the limitation, that how much quality papers I have to read? That has to be, that skill has to be developed, that how many papers has to be, what is the limitation, right? Because there is no limit when it comes to reading, and there is no limit when it comes to documents easily available in the internet space. Now the thing is, you have to also understand that what is the limit, and how much or how many papers you have to read, what are the logic behind that. The very important point again I wanted to convey here: logic. If you remember, I said when it comes to scientific research, what is important? Two things: logic and evidence, right? So that logic and evidence is one of the part that has to be understood from the theoretical skill. You have to develop a logic, and of course all the literature is somehow evident, and that is the evidence that you are working on, that some research article. Now the second part of this two skill is methodological skills. Know how, right? So what are the different methodologies? It's very, very important. Here there is a role of research methodology. What kind of design you are selecting, entire sampling, what sample size has to be, how much sample size is relevant, what are the procedures, if it is a scale, whether reliability is there or not, whether validity is there or not, right? Scale reliability, scale validity, selection of sample, it has to be biased, it has to be non-biased, sorry, it has to be non-biased, the biasness has not be there, right? Selection of sample. Or when it comes to analytical tools, what analytical tool you are going to consider when it comes to analysis, how to present result, how to write article, right? Nowadays R, Python, right? These are some of the tools. Wait a second. And R, Python, SPSS, Smart PLS, and a number of other programs like eViews, right? So R, I prefer to choose R over others because R is providing a liberty and is specific to the free software, because R is a free software for analysis. So we are using R software largely because of its free access to each and everyone, and rest of the, even Python is also free, and rest of the softwares are generally connected with some of the fee. So therefore it's up to the this is something limitations we can say. If you are having some good finance or good budget, so you can spend money on these softwares. But the very purpose of this under the two skill set which I have mentioned here is how to develop the methodological skills. So you have to see what are the research design, you have to have understanding about research design, you have to understand what the entire sampling size, how you are taking the samples, how much sample is required, what is the minimum sample size, what is the reliability of the scale, what is the validity of the scale, then what is the analytical tools you are using, the sample has to be non-biased, and number of methodological skills are again required, so that you can defend that whatever you have done, that is having a replicability. Why this methodology? Because replicability, verifiability, validity, reliability. So these are some very important, and of course the systematization. This is systematic. Research is systematic. So a proper methodology has to be used. This shows that it is systematic, it is replicable and reproducible, it is verifiable, it is reliable, it is validity, its validity is okay. So these are some of the things that is required for methodological skills. I hope the basic understanding of the research from the two words, two skills and two labors perspective is clear to you all. So in the next session, we will discuss about characteristics of research with some of the other related concepts. Thank you very much. Thank you.